just to use chemical application. I don't have a list off the top of my head. I hesitate to share specific products just off the top of my head, but I can always find that out for you. So for example, if you have just invasive grasses, I know that there are products out there that you can apply during a dry day, not when it's raining, near water's edge that's water safe but is grass specific, so it will target those invasive grasses. My contractors use that kind of stuff, so I'm happy to try to get that information and share it with Nicole.
I don't think the vinegar actually gets down to the root level, but I was very impressed with your endorsement of 9-bark, something I've been propagating here.
It's a fantastic plant.
Strip off it's a great plant.
It is. It looks like Tim Burton himself designed it. It's very cool. It's probably my favorite plant. But let me try to, I know I have a aware of water safe invasive grass treatment products that I can try to share with you all.
Todd, did you watch the October speaker for the Blue Ridge Prism?
The new Blue Ridge what?
Okay, the Blue Ridge Prism, they do invasives. That was our October speaker. It's also on our YouTube channel. I can send that to you. But
thank you. I think I missed. It doesn't sound familiar.
Okay.
I know that the New River Conservation Group is something I try to support, and I'm really impressed at how much you all are doing. It's really fantastic. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Check the chat. Nicole just put the web link for the Blue Ridge Prism.
Thank you.
I have a question about the length. I have a question about the length of the buffer. Is that 35 feet on each side or 35 feet counting both sides?
I mean, both sides is always better. Because I have a perfect example. I actually wish I took a picture of it. My parents live in the Piedmont of North Carolina, and a few years back, my dad if he had to tell anybody what I do, he would have no idea how to describe it. So I decided to help him out, and I planted a stream in his backyard on one side because he doesn't own the other side. That was 4 years ago now. He has really tall plants on his bank, and it has not moved an inch, and his neighbor's side where they mow to the water's edge is completely eroded now. So I would recommend both sides. More is always better. But the reason they say 35 is because there have been studies that show that within a 35-foot buffer, you're retaining as much of those benefits as possible. That's kind of the minimum that we would recommend. But anything
you
is
mean the minimum, it would be 35 on both sides?
Yes.
Or 35, okay, 35 on both sides, got it, okay.
That's what we would recommend, yeah.
Yeah. You had another slide shortly after that. I was taking notes and I missed it because you were moving kind of fast, and you were talking about mowing, and mowing leads to erosion, sediment, increased temperature, and nutrient runoff, and something else.
Right there. So I sometimes even have a slide. I wish I had used it for you guys, but I trimmed this thing a lot, believe it or not. It was actually it was like a circle. It kind of showed how sedimentation is almost like a positive feedback loop. So when your property erodes and your bank becomes vertical, and that mud gets in the river, and it increases the temperature, and it, you know, it's cyclical, but that's the slide I believe you're referring to.
Okay, that's great, thanks. You could have had more. This was wonderful, and next time do it again and just put everything in there.
Will do. You would not believe how many I actually trimmed. Like I said, normally I have like an hour and a half, then lunch, then more time. So I tried to condense it, but I appreciate that, and I would be happy to do this again, hopefully in person. Great.
Yeah, and Chelsea, if it's all right, maybe I can share your slides directly too for note takers or people who want the information.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can share. I can provide that to you here shortly. I'll send it to you.
And another just comment is Chelsea and I, before the pandemic, were really gung-ho, super passionate, trying to get a live workshop in the New River Valley to teach folks in person on a stream how to do this work that Chelsea does. And so as soon as we feel comfortable doing that, we will be sure to make that happen.
Absolutely. And a side note to that is that just recently we have been doing some in-person work outside with a few people. And so if people were interested in doing a live along a stream project, I'm happy to come up for that. Only because when you're actually out there and you have a bucket of live stakes in front of you and you're actually installing them in the ground, everyone always has the same questions that come up naturally, and it's just so easy to address it then and there and show people how to do it. And it's just so nuanced, so it's a really good experience to have people do it themselves, and those natural questions are addressed. So I'm absolutely happy to do that if people are interested.
Chelsea, did you have anything to do with the working on the town branch in Christiansburg?
Not in Christiansburg, but we, like Nicole mentioned, we've done a lot, and we continue to do a lot of work in Pulaski. So we've done a restoration along Valley Branch in the middle of Pulaski next to the train depot. And we're right now putting together a big plan for all of Peak Creek that I'm writing the report for now. But I'm not familiar with the Christiansburg project.
Mm-hmm. Christiansburg did a remediation, and Beth and Fred, who are on here now, have been taking out invasives and they're starting to replant it. It was planted somewhat, but it needs more work because of the invasives, of course.
Always, yeah. One thing I've learned is never tell my volunteers that are there for one day pulling invasives that their work is futile, but sometimes it kind of is, unless they can come back every year for 7 or 8 years. Yeah, those seed banks are really hard to deplete.
You mentioned the stream in Christiansburg. Of course, it reminds me of also Strubles in Blacksburg. But we had LLI classes on global, and there's a retired professor from Tech who uses diatoms to measure stream health. And I didn't know, and he does this in the Christiansburg thing. Before and after, they did some things like, governing sedimentation control and things like that. But I didn't realize that there's a push to use diatoms as a measurement for stream health.
I didn't either, because diatoms are made of silica, are they not? That's very interesting. I wonder what the relation is there.
Well, you actually need some silica in the water for them to grow very well, but they can grow with a low amount. But they actually seem to be a good indicator of the health, like in the Christiansburg stream restoration things behind the Kroger store and things like that. And wow. I didn't realize that diatoms were one of those major things for keeping oxygen in the oceans at a correct level, or CO2 and things like that.
Yeah, iron is as well. It's a really fascinating topic for sure. Yeah, but I definitely like to include that global scale concept, just because it's absolutely true. What you do in your backyard can affect the world, so it's fun to hammer that home. But I made a note about the diatom research. I'm gonna look that up. That's fascinating. Thanks for sharing.
Chelsea, I know someone who is the person who's doing that. And the thing with the diatoms is that there's a lot more diversity where there is lower pollution. And you can sometimes, depending on the species of diatoms, the genuses and the species of diatoms, you can suppose what type of pollution, whether it's organic or heavy metals or one thing or another. And he would love to probably talk to you about it.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, if that person has anything that they could share just for reading material, that's really cool. That's the first I've heard of that.
Actually, the LLI Global had a recording of that presentation, and Don Mullins was the originator of that. And perhaps I can see if we can get that video of that class, maybe shared. But I'm glad, oh, so Carol, you know the gentleman. I forget his name right now.
Yeah, it's David Orcutt.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Great talk. And it's amazing how much work that man does. I mean, stream restoration in Christiansburg. And,
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable how much he's been doing there and still doing.
I'm going to look that up because that's really fascinating. Thank you guys for sharing. I'm sure if I Google that, his name, David Orcutt, well, I'm sure that'll come up. Yeah. Very cool.
Where can one get these live stakes?
That's a great question. So the main supplier that we use is a nursery here in Ashe County, North Carolina, and they're the ones that ship all over the Southeast. They're called Foggy Mountain Nursery, and I will drop their website into the chat box if I can find the chat box again, which it doesn't look like I know how to do. Anyway, it's right here. I'll drop it in later. FoggyMTN.com. You can order live steaks from them, like I said, and they will ship them.
That's a perfect segue for me to ask a quick question, if I could, Chelsea. So there's a stream near where I live that runs very close to the road. And so with the material that the road crews put on in the winter to get rid of snow and ice, are any of the live sticks more tolerant to salt and the other materials that the road crews use?
That's actually a really great question. I don't actually know of any direct relation between increased salinity and the native live steaks that we use. But yeah, that's really interesting. My only note there is that planting them, regardless of what's being done on the adjacent land, is going to be good. I'm sure the salinity will be a challenge, but if you continue to do your maintenance, replant as often as you can, I'm sure that buffer will do exactly what it's supposed to do to filter out that excess salinity before it reaches a stream. But I don't know the answer to that question. That's really fascinating. I'm going to see if I can find an answer for you.
Thanks. It was a great presentation. I really learned a lot and enjoyed it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Just wanted to follow up real quick on the salt question. The Isaac Walton League is providing salt testing kits, salt monitoring kits, and I just put a link in the chat. So if you're concerned about salt usage, you can, they'll send you a kit and you go and test the water before a snow event, before the roads get salted, and then test it afterwards, and you can find out if the roads are being oversalted. So that might help mitigate some of that. And I know the Virginia Extension has a publication on salinity and salt tolerance, and I can look for that and share it with everybody. But it's a list of like salt spray versus salt soil, and what species are tolerant of it.
Excellent.
That's fascinating, Nicole. Thank you for sharing that. And one thing I can at least add to that conversation is that I know that a local municipality here, Boone, North Carolina, which is a little more affluent because of the college town, they've actually switched over to a beet juice solution of some sort that they use on their roads. It's a little more eco-friendly, a little less salt, so that might be a suggestion for municipalities in your area, perhaps.
I wanted to mention, I think some people have been switching, I have, to like calcium chloride, which supposedly is better than the sodium chloride.
Oh, fascinating.
For
I know for sidewalks and things, I carry a bag of just kitty litter too. Seems to work. But we're on a little bit of a tangent, but that was a great question. I wish I had the better answer, but Nicole seems to be your woman.
Yeah, and the Salt Watch program is open to anyone and it's free to participate. So we're very interested in getting more people in the New River Valley in our watershed testing salt, monitoring salt in their waters. So have something fun to do this winter. If it snows at all, you never really know these days.
That's very cool, because I would automatically assume that all municipalities over salt out of an abundance of caution, but it would be cool to have actual scientific data saying whether or not they actually do. That's cool.
I wondered if, I thought urea was sometimes also used for ice removal. It's a bit of a fertilizer there.
That was new to me.
If you're looking at the chat, let me see. Angie Holmes has said that they use Dawn vinegar and Epsom salt. That's an herbicide? Is that correct? And is it mixed in equal amounts of each in the solution?
Dawn vinegar and Epsom salt?
That's in the chat. And Angie, maybe she's hung up. Is she still there, Angie Holmes?
I'm still here.
Oh, okay. Is that equal parts of Dawn vinegar and Epsom salt?
It's yeah, it's equal parts.
Oh, okay. And that's you're using that as an herbicide, is that correct?
Yeah, just around the house, so we're not spraying chemicals. We have dogs and stuff and kids, and I don't want them running through it, so.
Ah, yes.
Do you use that just for like just grasses growing in places they don't need to be growing?
Yeah, I use that when my husband tells me we need to get rid of the weeds. I would let them grow, but he wants them not grown, so.
Yeah, you're like me. The less I mow, the better.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm gonna have to try that. I'll add that to my presentation with a little.
It doesn't penetrate like Todd said. The vinegar doesn't penetrate as well, but the Dawn holds the salt and vinegar onto the leaf, so it's more of a aesthetic thing than it is a complete riddance. But for around the house, it helps.
That's still very cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. I might just use that at my house. Well, are there any other slides I could go back to, or does anybody have any other questions or things they'd like me to rephrase or go back over?
Well, Meg, could you say something about how do you get involved in a project? Let's say some community wants to get you involved. How would they do it?
That's a great question. You can just call me. Let me go back. We actually have a Virginia specific number. You can just call, whoops, you can just call that right there. You'll get me, or email me. I can provide my email as well, or Nicole, because I can't navigate my way back to the chat box, if you wouldn't mind sharing that in there. We now have a riparian buffer restoration effort that's funded in Virginia, in Giles, Montgomery, and parts of Craig County, which Nicole is actually helping me with. So if you live in one of those counties and you're concerned about a particular stream, just give me a call. We'll actually come out, do a site visit, take a look at what needs to be done, and then go from there. If there are groups that want me to come and work with them on a project or consult with them, I'm also more than happy to do so.
I wish I was a golfer. Maybe I could get the Pete Dye golf course to ask you to come. I wish they would do that, or voice doesn't.
If anybody ever has a way of reaching golfers, I'd love to know, because I struggle with that myself. It's very hard to get golf courses to look beyond just my name badge and understand that I'm there to help. And I don't want to just, condemn them for their landscaping. I actually do want to work with them. So if anybody ever has pointers on that, that would be great.
Well, actually, Chelsea, the golf pro at Pete Dye lives next door to me, and I've been trying to get him involved in the Watershed Roundtable, and he is interested in having a kayak launch at the river course. And so I think that we could be onto something there. So we'll have, next time you come up to the New River Valley, we'll have to get a list there or something.
Absolutely. George and I were talking today about needing to schedule a couple of days in the near future just to come up and look at all the sites that we already do have on our list. So I'd love to do that.
Nice. And yeah, I dropped your email address in the chat, and then I also found that publication on trees that are tolerant of salt.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
I'm not sure if those overlay with the live stake list, as those are sort of very specific, but could be worth a look.
Well, yeah, those were just kind of the top that we happen to have in stock a lot of times. And I just know really well as plants and where they do well. Like, for example, silky willow, for whatever reason, I've noticed does really well in sandy areas. No rhyme or reason. I'm not sure why, they just happen to. So I'm excited to take a look at that list and see if I can incorporate that kind of stuff into the program. So I appreciate you sharing it. And if you guys don't mind, I'm going to take a quick screenshot so everyone say hi. I'm gonna take a screenshot for, here we go. Sorry if that was loud, for our Facebook.
I have one more question. I know that if you'd had an all day long talk, you probably would have gone into the plants more specifically. So do you have a place where you have a suggested plant list, which ones do best in sandy and blah, 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 and rocky? And
I don't have that immediately, but let me go back to this Foggy Mountain page. So again, the foggymtm.com. If you go to their price list, everything on this list, these live stakes and these bare roots, all do well in riparian areas for the most part. I can always provide a little snippet of information of what I've learned, but I've shared most of that with you guys. Just that 9-bark do really well in places where beaver are present. Silky willow does well in sand. And then everything else that I've learned so far, I've kind of shared with y'all. But I'm sure with all of your expertise, we could probably come up with a pretty good list.
And I have another question. What if you took the live stakes and you rooted them at your home in a gallon bucket or something like that, and then you planted them, like say in April or March when they come? So would that be better or not make any difference?
That's a great question.
You might have more success, that's what I'm thinking.
That's a great question. I think if I were going to go that route, I would just start with potted plants altogether. And you could plant a potted plant, any time of year.
Yeah, but a potted plant's more expensive. These are like really cheap.
They are. So my only concern there is that because live stakes are hammered in with a mallet, it can get pretty violent in the winter. The ground is really hard. And so if you have a live stake that's worked so hard to produce roots and then you hammer it into the ground, I'd just be concerned that those roots would get ripped off in the process.
Oh,
So
well,
Yeah,
I'm talking about actually you would dig a hole to plant like in a gallon container after you rooted them at,
I guess that would be no different than planting one of these bare roots. So yeah, if you were going to do that, I don't see any problem with that.
Would it be more chance for erosion though that way? Like if you're planting them near the water's edge and you hammer them in, you're not disturbing the soil. Whereas if you were to dig in a container, you're disturbing the soil. But does that make any difference? I mean, they root in pretty fast.
So. No, I think if there's erosion present, the amount of dirt you're going to disturb digging a hole is a drop in the bucket, so to speak. I don't think it should have that big an impact.
Thank you. Thanks for the talk. It's great.
Of course, anytime, guys. Thank you.
I wanted to mention two things. My son-in-law Matt in Fayetteville, they can only use native things to that part of Arkansas. And so that adds sort of a restriction. We get concerned about invasive species, but also identifying native things. Like I told them, why don't you put pachysandra along stream banks and things like that? And never put English ivy, but maybe pachysandra.
That is a plant I'm unfamiliar with.
The other thing I thought might be a good thing to do is get some welding rod with a mushroom cap on it or something like that. that you would poke a hole in first before you put in your live stakes.
We've absolutely done that. It is a pain in the butt, and it is a lot of work because we're planting sometimes thousands in a day. And, you know, if you're using rebar because the ground is just so hard, it's usually best to just pick a different day. Just wait a little while. Although we have done it, it's just not my favorite thing to do. You're going to need an Advil afterwards. But absolutely can work, yeah.
Any other questions? If not, we thank Chelsea for her talk. It was very, very interesting in that. So Nicole will be, she's recording it now. I think it gets automatically recorded, and then she'll put it into our YouTube channel. I can send that to you if you'd like then. Yes, so it was very, very interesting. I'm gonna get my sister to watch it too, so. Okay.
Thank you all so much for having me. I love speaking to people. I love helping landowners directly. So I'm always here as a resource. New River Conservancy is here as a resource. So if you have any questions in the future, please don't hesitate to give us a call. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see everybody in another month then for our December meeting then.
And thank you very much.